South Africa and Israel have expelled each other's diplomats. But which country is on the right side of the law? We're going to find out right here. On Friday, South Africa decided to declare the Israeli charge d'affaires, so Israel's top diplomat at its Pretoria embassy, a persona non grata, giving him up to 72 hours to leave the country. In response, Israel decided to do the same, declaring South Africa's ambassador in Palestine a persona non grata, giving him the same fate. But the big question in this spat is, which side is legally correct? Now, before we get started, if you haven't already, please remember to subscribe to the channel. It's entirely free, and all you have to do is click on the subscribe button below the video. If you would like to enjoy some additional perks and support the channel, consider becoming a Power Club member. You can do so by clicking the join button below. Now let's get into it. So both sides have leveled some pretty damning accusations against one another. And in order for us to understand who is legally correct, we need to establish the facts on the ground first. A lot of half-truths and distortions have been floating around on social media as well as on news stations in South Africa. And so it's very important for us to break down the timeline of what really happened. Now, some of you might not know, but I'm actually a journalist myself, and I wrote a piece on IntelliNews to describe exactly what happened. For any of you who are investors or perhaps just interested in understanding what goes on in emerging markets, consider checking out intellinews.com for news insights, analysis, and valuable business data. So getting into my article, I explained how the South African government declared Israeli charge d'affaires Ariel Seidman a persona non grata, giving him 72 hours to leave the country. Israel retaliated by declaring Minister Shaun Edward Beineveld, South Africa's ambassador to Palestine, a persona non grata as well. This decisive action follows a series of unacceptable violations of diplomatic norms and practice which pose a direct threat to South Africa's sovereignty. South African Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DIRCO spokesperson Crispin Piri said in a press release. These violations include the repeated use of official Israeli social media platforms to launch insulting attacks against His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa and a deliberate failure to inform DIRCO of purported visits by senior Israeli officials, the statement continued. So it's important for us at this stage to establish that I've taken a look at Ariel Seidman's social media accounts, specifically X, and I haven't come across any insults or criticisms that he has leveled against Ramaphosa personally. For all you know, perhaps I didn't go far back enough in his timeline, but what I did notice is that both the Freedom Front Plus and the DA issued press statements condemning DIRCO for this decision, and they actually mentioned how it didn't seem that there was any evidence of Ariel Seidman accusing Ramaphosa of anything or leveling insults at him. And so at this moment in time, unless further evidence presents itself, this accusation by DIRCO appears to be false. Moving on, he explained, we urge the Israeli government to ensure its future diplomatic conduct demonstrates respect for the Republic and the established principles of international engagement, the statement concluded. In December 2025, King Buyalekaya Dalindyebo of the Upper Tembu Kingdom visited Israel in a trip that was heavily scrutinized by DIRCO. Following his trip, Israeli representatives in South Africa met with Dalindyebo and over 50 traditional leaders in the Eastern Cape, one of South Africa's 9 provinces, on January 23. The meeting involved discussions on Israeli efforts to provide assistance with the provision of water, agriculture, and healthcare assistance to communities in the Eastern Cape. Following the meeting, Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane condemned the Israeli embassy officials involved, claiming in a press statement on January 27 that their visit undermined, and I quote, the sovereign right of the Republic of South Africa to manage its international affairs. In response to DIRCO's decision, the Israeli Foreign Ministry issued a press statement reading, following South Africa's false attacks against Israel in the international arena and the unilateral baseless step taken against the charge d'affaires of Israel in South Africa, that South Africa's senior diplomatic representative, Minister Shaun Edward Beineveld, is a persona non grata and must leave Israel within 72 hours. So as we see here, DIRCO spokesperson Piri responded to this on X, writing, Mr. Sean Baineveld is ambassador to the state of Palestine, not Israel. Israel's obstructionism forces a farcical arrangement where he is accredited through the very state that occupies his host country. This underscores Israel's refusal to honor international consensus on Palestinian statehood. So, although Piri doesn't explicitly state it, he indicates with his wording that Israel is in the wrong and that they cannot declare him a persona non grata because he is the ambassador to the state of Palestine rather than Israel. And then, of course, he goes on to say that it's a farcical arrangement where he's actually being accredited through the very state that occupies his host country. Now, it's actually important for us to note here is that whether or not you believe that Israel is morally correct in this regard, this doesn't actually circumvent the law. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to look at the Vienna Convention, which stipulates exactly whether or not South Africa is correct in their move and Israel is correct in their response. So here we have the law in question, specifically the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations of 1961. I will post a link to this in the description box below so that you can check it out for yourself. Now, in order to answer this question, we have to focus on Article 9. So I'm just going to use my search function here and look for Article 9. Here we go. So, the receiving state may at any time and without having to explain its decision notify the sending state that the head of the mission or any member of the diplomatic staff of the mission is persona non grata, or that any other member of the staff of the mission is not acceptable. In any such case, the sending state shall, as appropriate, either recall the person connected or terminate his functions within the mission. A person may be declared non grata or not acceptable before arriving in the territory of the receiving state. So what this basically says in layman's terms is that the receiving state, so in this specific case South Africa, has the right to declare anybody a persona non grata who is an ambassador or chargé d'affaires or staff member at the embassy without actually giving a reason why. And so ultimately, South Africa is within its right to declare Ariel Seidman a persona non grata. But what's actually very interesting here is that Israel is within its right to do the same to South Africa's ambassador in Ramallah. Because after all, as controversial as it may seem to some, Israel is actually the receiving state for the ambassador. Now, the reason why Israel is considered a receiving state, and this is according to the legal opinions of top international experts, is that ultimately Israel has territorial control over Ramallah. In addition, Israel controls the borders and entry points to the West Bank where Ramallah is situated, and a diplomat such as Baineveld cannot actually physically reach Ramallah without entering into these Israeli checkpoints and border crossings. For example, if he wants to take a flight to Ramallah, he actually has to land in Ben Gurion Airport in Israel and then cross through an entry point into the West Bank. And so ultimately, Israel is considered the receiving state, or at least the state which permits transit. But what's actually very interesting here is that even if one was to dispute whether or not Israel is actually the receiving state, there's another article in this Vienna Convention that actually protects Israel further, and that's Article 40. So, as explained here, if a diplomatic agent passes through or is in the territory of a third state which has granted him a passport visa, if such visa was necessary, while proceeding to take up or to return to his post, or when returning to his own country, the third state shall accord him inviolability and such other immunities as may be required to ensure his transit or return. The same shall apply in the case of any members of his family enjoying privileges or immunities who are accompanying the diplomatic agent or traveling separately to join him or to return to their country. Now, what's very interesting with this specific article is that it explains here that this diplomatic agent receives the right to continue travel. But as you can see here, it's only if the state has granted him a passport visa if such visa was necessary, which it is. And so if Israel was to deny him an entry visa in order to enter Israeli territory. They are within their right to do so. And so he can actually be blocked from being in Ramallah due to this reason. And so ultimately what we see here is that there are two articles in the Vienna Convention which support Israel's decision to declare Beinefeld, which is South Africa's ambassador to Palestine, a persona non grata. And ultimately, what this really does is show how DIRCO doesn't seem to understand the very law under which they operate, which is highly embarrassing for the ANC. Furthermore, this actually presents a very interesting situation because while it may seem that South Africa got one over Israel by sending their charge d'affaires away, if we dig deeper, this could have been a genius diplomatic move by Israel. Remember how in the article I explained that Israeli health officials decided to meet with the Xhosa king in order to provide health care, agriculture, and water expertise? Well, that very king went on Newsroom Africa in an interview condemning the Eastern Cape premier for not only questioning his own sovereignty as a royal leader, but also condemning Israeli officials. And he even mentioned how the UAE was happy to make donations to South Africa, yet nobody questioned it, whether or not it's diplomatically correct. And this is very interesting because this can greatly damage the ANC ahead of the municipal elections. Remember, the Eastern Cape is one of the few major provinces in the country where the ANC still has a stronghold. Furthermore, the Upper Tembu Kingdom is very influential within the Eastern Cape. And if royalists feel that their king has been disrespected by the ANC, they're not going to be very happy with the party. Furthermore, there may be people who are not royalists at all, but they do feel that they desperately need help in order to get these water services and healthcare services up and running. And by the ANC deciding to basically stand in the way of this could greatly infuriate these people. And ultimately, these people are not going to care about diplomatic norms, whether or not the ANC is correct, when water security and healthcare security is at risk. And so ultimately, Israel has led the ANC into a major trap that will surely hurt them badly electorally. Thank you very much for tuning into this video. If you found it informative, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more content. Until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.